You're standing on Omaha Beach, Normandy, France, June 6, 1944, 6:30 a.m. You're infantry soldier in first wave of D-Day invasion, largest amphibious assault in human history. You're inside LCVP, landing craft, vehicle, personnel, wooden boat, 36 feet long, crammed with 35 other combat-equipped soldiers, approaching heavily defended beach under intense German machine gun and artillery fire. Your boat is one of thousands designed and built by boat builder from New Orleans named Andrew Jackson Higgins, man most Americans had never heard of but who General Dwight Eisenhower would later credit as the man who won the war for us. Your boat's coxswain, helmsman steering craft, navigates through rough seas toward beach designated as your landing zone. German bullets ping off steel ramp at boat's bow. Men around you crouch behind protective armor plates, gripping rifles, trying not to think about what happens when that ramp drops. You're carrying approximately 90 pounds of equipment: rifle, ammunition, grenades, entrenching tool, canteen, rations, gas mask. If boat hits deep water and you have to swim, that equipment will drag you straight to bottom. Boat's flat bottom scrapes sand. You've hit beach in approximately 3 feet of water, shallow enough to wade through without drowning. Coxswain pulls lever. Steel bow ramp, 10 feet wide, weighing 500 pounds, held by chains and hydraulic mechanism, drops forward instantly, creating flat walkway directly from boat interior to beach. You and 35 other soldiers run down ramp in approximately 10 seconds, exiting boat while it's still partially afloat. Some men fall immediately, cut down by German fire. Others make it to beach, seeking cover behind obstacles and debris. Behind you, coxswain raises ramp using hydraulic system, reverses boat, heads back to transport ship for another load of troops. That bow ramp, which seems obvious now, which saved your life by getting you off boat in seconds rather than minutes, was considered impossible design by U.S. Navy just 5 years earlier. Navy's Bureau of Ships insisted landing craft needed side or stern ramps. Front ramp would make boat unstable, uncontrollable, dangerous. Andrew Higgins, who'd never attended college, never studied naval architecture, learned boat building working in Louisiana swamps, built prototype with front ramp in approximately 60 hours to prove Navy wrong. He succeeded. Between 1942 and 1945, Higgins Industries in New Orleans produced over 20,000 LCVPs, the Higgins boats that became synonymous with amphibious warfare and made D-Day logistically possible. Without Higgins's revolutionary bow ramp design, Allied invasion of Nazi-occupied Europe would have been impossible, or would have resulted in casualties so catastrophic that invasion couldn't succeed. Traditional Navy landing craft with side or stern ramps required 3 to 5 minutes to disembark troops who had to climb over boat sides or exit through rear opening, then wade through deeper water while exposed to enemy fire for extended periods. Higgins's bow ramp reduced disembarkation time to approximately 10 seconds. Troops exited directly onto beach in shallower water, dramatically reducing exposure to enemy fire. That design difference literally saved tens of thousands of American, British, and Allied lives across hundreds of amphibious operations from North Africa to Pacific Islands to D-Day itself. The numbers tell story of industrial achievement that transformed modern warfare. Between 1942 and 1945, Higgins Industries produced over 20,000 LCVPs, approximately 1,500 LCMs, landing craft, mechanized, larger versions capable of transporting Sherman tanks, 900 PT boats, fast patrol torpedo boats, and thousands of other specialized watercraft. Total production exceeded 23,000 vessels in less than 4 years, average of approximately 16 boats per day, 550 per month. At peak employment in 1943, Higgins Industries employed over 25,000 workers operating 7 factories in New Orleans, making it one of the largest industrial employers in Louisiana despite being privately owned company started by one man with minimal capital. Higgins boats were used in every major Allied amphibious operation in European and Pacific theaters. North Africa landings in November 1942 employed hundreds of LCVPs transporting American troops to hostile beaches. Sicily invasion in July 1943 used over 1,000 Higgins boats. Italy landings at Salerno and Anzio relied entirely on LCVPs for troop transport. D-Day invasion on June 6, 1944, employed approximately 1,500 Higgins boats, landing over 175,000 troops across 5 beaches in first 24 hours. Pacific theater operations at Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Philippines, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa all depended fundamentally on LCVPs transporting Marines from offshore ships to defended beaches under fire. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Commander of Allied Expeditionary Forces, stated in 1964 interview with historian Stephen Ambrose, "Andrew Higgins is the man who won the war for us. If Higgins had not designed and built those LCVPs, we never could have landed over an open beach. The whole strategy of the war would have been different." That wasn't hyperbole from commander known for understated assessments. Without Higgins boats, Allied forces couldn't conduct amphibious operations that were essential to defeating Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. Strategy would have required capturing established ports, heavily defended, easily destroyed by retreating enemies, rather than landing directly on beaches. War would have lasted years longer, costing millions of additional lives. Even Adolf Hitler recognized Higgins's impact. German intelligence monitored American industrial production, identifying key manufacturers enabling Allied military operations. Hitler reportedly called Higgins the new Noah, biblical reference to boat builder who'd saved humanity. Bitter compliment, acknowledging that Higgins's landing craft were fundamental to Allied success. If Germans had possessed equivalent amphibious capability, they might have successfully invaded Britain in 1940 after France fell. Instead, lacking effective landing craft, Germany abandoned Operation Sea Lion, planned invasion of England, as too risky. Andrew Jackson Higgins was born August 28, 1886 in Columbus, Nebraska, landlocked state over 1,000 miles from nearest ocean. Father was newspaper editor and lawyer. Family was middle class, Irish-American Catholic, emphasizing education and hard work. Andrew attended local schools through 8th grade but never graduated high school, leaving formal education at approximately age 15 to work full-time. He worked various jobs including lumberyard laborer, railroad worker, and office clerk, learning practical business skills through experience rather than academic study. In 1906, age 20, Higgins moved to Omaha working in lumber industry. He observed that transporting lumber via rivers required specialized boats capable of operating in shallow water while carrying heavy loads. Most existing riverboats got stuck on sandbars, damaged hulls on submerged obstacles, or couldn't maneuver in swift currents. Higgins began designing boats specifically for shallow water river operations, experimenting with hull shapes, propeller configurations, and rudder placements that improved performance in conditions where conventional boats failed. In 1910, Higgins moved to Mobile, Alabama, working for lumber company operating in Alabama and Mississippi rivers and bayous. Southern waterways presented unique challenges: shallow depths, sometimes 18 inches, muddy bottoms, cypress stumps and submerged logs, narrow channels requiring tight maneuvering, strong currents during floods. Higgins designed flat-bottomed boats with tunnel sterns, propeller and rudder recessed into channels protecting them from obstacles, and semi-planing hulls that rode partially on top of water rather than pushing through it. These Eureka boats could operate in waters where conventional boats couldn't go, carrying loads that would swamp other designs. In 1920, Higgins moved to New Orleans, Louisiana, establishing Higgins Lumber and Export Company. New Orleans offered access to Gulf of Mexico, Mississippi River, and extensive bayou systems where his specialized boats found eager customers. Oil companies drilling in coastal Louisiana marshes needed boats capable of transporting equipment and supplies through shallow water to drilling platforms. Commercial fishermen wanted fast, maneuverable boats for fishing in coastal bayous. And during Prohibition, 1920-1933, rum runners smuggling illegal alcohol from Caribbean islands to Louisiana coast needed boats faster than Coast Guard cutters and capable of escaping into shallow bayous where pursuers couldn't follow. Higgins never publicly admitted building boats specifically for bootleggers, but New Orleans' rum runner community knew Higgins' boats were fastest, most reliable craft available. His Eureka boats could reach 25-30 mph, extraordinary speed for 1920s wooden boats, handle rough Gulf waters, then zip into bayou channels barely deep enough to float, easily outrunning Coast Guard vessels restricted to deeper channels. This somewhat illegal business provided revenue that allowed Higgins to experiment with designs and establish manufacturing capability he'd later apply to military contracts. In 1926, Higgins officially incorporated Higgins Industries, focusing on commercial and recreational boats. His designs earned reputation for ruggedness, speed, and shallow water capability unmatched by competitors. By 1938, Higgins Industries employed approximately 75 workers producing boats for Louisiana oil industry, fishing fleet, and recreational market. Business was modestly successful but limited to regional niche market. Everything changed in 1938 when U.S. Marine Corps began developing amphibious warfare doctrine, tactical concept of launching assaults on enemy-held beaches from ships at sea. Marines needed specialized landing craft capable of transporting troops from transport ships anchored offshore directly to beaches, surviving enemy fire, disembarking troops quickly, then returning for additional loads. Existing Navy landing craft were woefully inadequate. Bureau of Ships' standard design, called Bureau Boat, featured stern ramp requiring troops to exit through rear of craft, wade around sides to reach beach, exposing them to enemy fire for extended periods while struggling through waist-deep or deeper water. Marine Corps, dissatisfied with Bureau Boat's performance, issued specifications for improved landing craft design. Requirements included shallow draft, ability to operate in 3 feet of water or less, protected propeller and rudder to avoid damage on beaches, bow configuration allowing troops to exit directly toward beach, speed of at least 8 knots, capacity for 36 combat-equipped troops or equivalent cargo. Navy Bureau of Ships submitted refined version of their Bureau Boat. Higgins, learning about competition through contacts with Marine Corps officers, submitted his Eureka boat design modified to meet military specifications. Initial Navy reaction was dismissive skepticism bordering on contempt. Higgins was obscure regional boat builder with no military contracting experience, no established relationship with Bureau of Ships, no political connections in Washington. His boats were wooden. Navy strongly preferred metal construction, believing wood was obsolete technology. His proposed bow ramp design violated established naval architecture principles. Bureau of Ships engineers insisted front ramp would make craft dangerously unstable, difficult to control, prone to swamping in rough seas. But Marine Corps insisted on competitive testing at New River, North Carolina in 1939-1940. Bureau Boat competed against Higgins Boat in series of trials evaluating speed, maneuverability, shallow water capability, beaching characteristics, and troop disembarkation efficiency. Results weren't even close. Higgins Boat consistently outperformed Bureau Boat. Higher speed, 12 knots versus 8. Better maneuverability in tight quarters, operated reliably in shallower water, 2 out of 3 feet versus 4 to 5 feet. Disembarked troops in approximately 10 seconds versus 3 to 5 minutes for Bureau Boat, whose stern ramp required soldiers to wade around boat sides through deeper water. Marine Corps recommended immediate adoption of Higgins' design. Navy Bureau of Ships stalled, demanding additional testing, raising technical objections, insisting steel construction was superior to wood, despite Higgins's boats demonstrating superior performance. Political and bureaucratic resistance delayed contracts for over a year. Marine officers who'd witnessed testing grew increasingly frustrated, some threatening resignation in protest over Navy's refusal to adopt obviously superior design needed for amphibious operations essential to Pacific War strategy. Finally, in 1941, with war clearly approaching and Marine Corps threatening to procure boats independently through Army channels if necessary, Navy authorized limited initial contracts for Higgins landing craft. Original order was modest, approximately 300 boats for evaluation purposes. Then Pearl Harbor attack on December 7, 1941, dramatically changed everything. United States was suddenly at war with Japan and Germany. Amphibious operations were no longer theoretical doctrine, but immediate operational necessity. Higgins Industries received contracts for thousands of landing craft with delivery schedules compressed from years to months. Higgins faced enormous challenge scaling production from approximately 75 employees building dozens of boats annually to massive operation, employing thousands producing hundreds of boats monthly. He leased warehouse facilities across New Orleans, converting them into boat assembly plants. He implemented assembly line production methods adapted from automotive industry, standardized components, specialized workstations, semi-skilled workers trained in specific tasks rather than complete boat-building craft. He recruited workforce from everywhere: women, African Americans, elderly workers, disabled veterans, anyone willing to learn quickly and work hard. Workforce integration was revolutionary for 1940s segregated Louisiana. Higgins hired African Americans for skilled positions: welders, carpenters, machine operators, paying same wages as white workers performing equivalent jobs. He established integrated work crews where black and white employees worked side by side, violating Southern segregation customs. When white workers threatened walkouts protesting integration, Higgins reportedly told them, "I don't care if workers are purple with green polka dots. If they can build boats, they work for me." Integration wasn't ideological commitment to civil rights. It was pragmatic necessity, driven by desperate need for workers as military draft depleted male workforce. But impact was significant, providing economic opportunities for African Americans traditionally excluded from skilled industrial employment. Women comprised approximately 40% of Higgins Industries' workforce by 1943. Roughly 10,000 female workers performing welding, carpentry, painting, assembly, and administrative roles. Pay was union scale regardless of gender, approximately $1, 50 per hour, depending on skill level, equivalent to $17 to $25 hourly in 2025 currency. Women could earn solid middle-class wages performing challenging industrial work, unprecedented opportunity in era when female workers typically earned half male wages for equivalent labor. Rosie the Riveter, iconic image representing American women's wartime industrial contributions, was partly inspired by women working in Higgins Industries' New Orleans shipyards. LCVP specifications were deceptively simple but represented culmination of decades of practical boat-building experience translated into military application. Length measured exactly 36 feet, 3 inches. Beam width was 10 feet, 10 inches. Draft depth was approximately 2 feet aft, 3 feet forward when loaded with troops, shallow enough to approach beaches conventional boats couldn't reach. Empty displacement was approximately 9,000 pounds. Fully loaded with 36 troops plus crew, displacement increased to roughly 18,000 pounds. Construction used marine plywood hull reinforced with wooden frames, steel bow ramp weighing 500 pounds, armor plates protecting coxswain station and engine compartment from small arms fire and shrapnel. Power came from 225 horsepower gray marine diesel engine, reliable, fuel efficient, capable of operating continuously for extended periods with minimal maintenance. Engine drove single bronze propeller through tunnel stern design protecting propeller from beach obstacles and allowing operation in extremely shallow water. Maximum speed was approximately 12 knots, 14 mph, unloaded, reducing to 9 knots when carrying full complement of troops and equipment. Range was roughly 50 nautical miles at cruising speed, sufficient for most amphibious operations transporting troops from offshore transport ships to beaches several miles distant. Crew consisted of 4 personnel: coxswain, helmsman, steering from protected station at stern, engineer monitoring engine and mechanical systems, 2 machine gunners manning, 30 caliber Browning machine guns mounted on port and starboard sides behind protective armor shields. Coxswain operated ramp release mechanism, lever that released hydraulic locks allowing 500-pound steel bow ramp to drop forward under gravity, creating flat walkway from boat interior directly to beach. After troops disembarked, coxswain operated hydraulic pump powered by main engine raising ramp for return voyage to transport ship for next load. Revolutionary feature was bow ramp design that Navy Bureau of Ships had declared impossible. Traditional naval architecture held that front-loading ramp would create dangerously unstable craft. Weight concentration at bow would cause boat to pitch forward unpredictably, make steering nearly impossible, cause swamping in rough seas. Higgins proved through practical testing that these theoretical concerns didn't materialize when ramp was properly designed. Steel ramp acted as counterweight balanced by engine and fuel tanks at stern. When ramp was raised during transit, boat rode slightly bow-high, improving performance in rough water. When ramp dropped for landing, weight shifted forward, helping beach boat more firmly. Far from creating instability, bow ramp actually improved handling characteristics compared to stern ramp designs Navy had been developing. Ramp also solved critical tactical problem that plagued previous landing craft designs. Bureau boat with stern ramp required troops to exit through rear opening, then wade around boat sides to reach beach, process taking 3 to 5 minutes, during which soldiers were exposed to enemy fire while struggling through waist-deep or deeper water, carrying 90 pounds of equipment. Higgins's bow ramp allowed 36 troops to run directly down 10-foot wide ramp in approximately 10 seconds. Exiting boat while it was still in 2 to 3 feet of water shallow enough to wade through without drowning risk. That time reduction from 3 to 5 minutes to 10 seconds literally saved tens of thousands of lives across hundreds of amphibious operations by dramatically reducing soldiers' exposure to enemy fire during most vulnerable moment of beach assault. D-Day invasion on June 6, 1944 represented ultimate test of Higgins's design. Operation Overlord, Allied invasion of Nazi-occupied France, was largest amphibious assault in human history. Over 156,000 troops landed across 5 beaches, Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juneau, Sword, in first 24 hours. Those troops arrived in Higgins boats. Approximately 1,500 LCVPs participated in D-Day landings, making multiple trips from offshore transport ships to beaches throughout day. Omaha Beach presented most difficult challenge. German defenses were strongest there. Concrete bunkers, machine gun nests, artillery positions, obstacles including Belgian gates, steel barriers, hedgehogs, steel anti-tank obstacles, and millions of mines buried in sand. First wave launching at 6:30 a.m. encountered murderous fire. Many LCVPs were hit by artillery before reaching beach, sinking with all troops aboard. Others beached successfully, but troops exiting ramps were cut down by machine gun fire within seconds. Casualties were catastrophic. Over 2,400 American soldiers killed or wounded at Omaha Beach on D-Day, highest losses of any landing sector. But without Higgins boats, casualties would have been even worse, or invasion would have been impossible. Bow ramp allowed surviving troops to exit quickly, seek cover behind beach obstacles, gradually suppress German positions through coordinated fire and maneuver. Alternative designs requiring troops to climb over sides or exit through stern would have resulted in total massacre. Soldiers would have been exposed to enemy fire for extended periods with no possibility of reaching cover quickly enough to survive. Higgins's 10-second disembarkation time meant difference between possible success with heavy casualties versus certain failure with complete annihilation of assault force. By day's end, over 156,000 Allied troops had landed successfully across 5 beaches. Omaha Beach eventually secured despite horrific initial casualties. Allied forces established beachheads, providing foundation for liberation of France and ultimate defeat of Nazi Germany. General Eisenhower later wrote in memoirs that D-Day's success depended fundamentally on Higgins boats delivering troops to defended beaches faster than enemy could kill them. Without those boats, invasion would have required capturing established ports, heavily defended, easily destroyed, making D-Day logistically impossible or prohibitively expensive in casualties. Pacific theater operations depended equally on Higgins boats throughout island-hopping campaign against Japan. Guadalcanal assault in August 1942 employed hundreds of LCVPs landing Marines on defended beaches. Tarawa in November 1943 demonstrated both boats' capabilities and limitations. Reef-protecting island prevented LCVPs from reaching beach, forcing Marines to wade hundreds of yards through chest-deep water under intense fire, suffering over 1,000 casualties in first hours. Lesson learned led to development of tracked amphibious vehicles, LVTs, that could cross reefs, but LCVPs remained primary assault craft for most Pacific operations. Philippines invasion in October 1944 employed over 700 Higgins boats, landing 4 divisions across Leyte beaches. Iwo Jima assault in February 1945 used LCVPs delivering Marines to volcanic island's black sand beaches under devastating Japanese fire from Mount Suribachi and surrounding highlands. Okinawa campaign in April-June 1945, largest Pacific amphibious operation, employed over 1,000 LCVPs transporting troops and supplies across 60-mile Long Island's multiple landing beaches. Between 1942 and 1945, Higgins Industries produced over 20,000 LCVPs from 7 factories in New Orleans, employing peak workforce of over 25,000 people. Production averaged approximately 16 boats per day, 550 per month, during peak periods in 1943-1944. That output required revolutionary manufacturing techniques adapted from automotive assembly lines. Standardized components, hull sections, ramp assemblies, engine installations were prefabricated in separate facilities, then transported to final assembly buildings where specialized crews completed boats in approximately 5 to 7 days from initial hull construction to sea trials. Quality control was rigorous despite high-speed production. Every LCVP underwent water testing in Lake Pontchartrain or Industrial Canal before delivery to Navy. Boats had to demonstrate proper handling, achieve specified speed, successfully deploy and retract ramp repeatedly, pass leak tests ensuring watertight integrity. Rejection rate was approximately 5%. Boats failing tests were returned for repairs and retesting before Navy acceptance. That attention to quality despite production pressures ensured Higgins boats performed reliably under combat conditions where mechanical failure could cost dozens of lives. Higgins Industries also produced approximately 1,500 LCMs, landing craft mechanized, larger versions capable of transporting Sherman tanks, jeeps with trailers, or 60 combat troops. LCMs measured 50 feet long, could carry loads up to 30 tons, used same bow ramp principle as LCVPs but scaled up for heavier cargo. These craft were essential for delivering armor and artillery to beaches, providing fire support for infantry once ashore. D-Day invasion employed approximately 300 LCMs transporting tanks and self-propelled guns directly to beaches within first hours of assault. Additionally, Higgins Industries manufactured approximately 900 PT boats, patrol torpedo boats, fast attack craft armed with torpedoes and machine guns used for coastal patrol, convoy escort, and attacking enemy shipping. PT boats were wooden hulls 78 feet long powered by 3 Packard aircraft engines producing combined 4,500 horsepower, achieving speeds exceeding 40 knots. Most famous PT boat was PT-109, commanded by future President John F. Kennedy in Pacific Theater. Kennedy's boat was rammed and sunk by Japanese destroyer in August 1943. Kennedy and crew survived, swimming to nearby island where they were eventually rescued. Incident that made Kennedy war hero and contributed to his later political success. Total production from Higgins Industries exceeded 23,000 vessels of all types during war years, approximately 87% of all landing craft used by Allied forces in European and Pacific theaters. That production represented extraordinary industrial achievement, transforming small regional boat manufacturer employing 75 workers into one of world's largest shipbuilders, employing 25,000 workers and operating 9 facilities across New Orleans. Government contracts totaled approximately $350 million, roughly $6 billion in 2025 currency. enormous sum making Higgins Industries one of largest defense contractors in United States. Andrew Higgins personally oversaw operations with legendary intensity and irascibility. He worked 16 18-hour days, inspected production facilities constantly, berated managers for inefficiency, demanded workers maintain punishing pace. He was notoriously profane, reportedly cursing out Navy officers who criticized his boats, telling one admiral to go to hell during heated meeting about contract specifications. But he also inspired fierce loyalty from employees who appreciated his fairness in hiring and compensation, his willingness to promote based on merit rather than connections, and his genuine respect for skilled craftsmen regardless of race or gender. Labor relations were a complicated mix of progressive practices and authoritarian management style. Higgins paid union-scale wages, maintained integrated workforce, provided health insurance and other benefits unusual for 1940s industrial employers. But he also resisted unionization attempts, fought with AFL-CIO representatives, occasionally fired workers for union organizing activities. These contradictions reflected Higgins's personality, genuinely committed to racial and gender equality in hiring but deeply hostile to organized labor's interference in his management decisions. Post-war transition proved catastrophic for Higgins Industries. With war's end in August 1945, military contracts evaporated overnight. Government canceled pending orders for thousands of landing craft no longer needed. Higgins attempted converting to civilian production, boats for commercial fishing, oil industry, recreational markets, but couldn't compete with established manufacturers who'd maintained civilian operations throughout war. Company that had employed 25,000 workers in 1943 employed fewer than 1,000 by 1946. Higgins Industries declared bankruptcy in 1948, reorganized under creditor control, limped along producing small numbers of boats until final closure in early 1950s. Andrew Higgins's personal fortune disappeared in company's collapse. He'd reinvested profits into expansion during war rather than taking large salary or dividends, leaving him relatively modest personal wealth when government contracts ended. Post-war business ventures failed, attempted aircraft manufacturing, housing construction, various consulting projects. He died August 1, 1952, at age 65, from combination of chronic health problems including stomach ulcers and heart disease exacerbated by decades of chain smoking, heavy drinking, and stress from business pressures. He died nearly broke, largely forgotten except by veterans who remembered boats that had saved their lives. His death received modest newspaper coverage, few column inches noting passing of man who'd built boats that enabled Allied victory. No national memorial service, no presidential proclamation, no special recognition from military he'd served so effectively. He was buried in New Orleans with simple gravestone identifying him as Andrew Jackson Higgins, 1886-1952. No mention of boats, no reference to war contribution, nothing indicating extraordinary achievement that had earned Eisenhower's praise as man who won war for us. Historical obscurity persisted for decades. While other industrialists like Henry Kaiser received recognition for wartime contributions, Higgins remained largely unknown outside Louisiana and military history specialist communities. His boats were remembered. Every D-Day documentary showed LCVPs approaching beaches, every Pacific War history mentioned landing craft, but Higgins himself was footnote, name mentioned briefly, if at all. Revival of Higgins's reputation began in 1980s, 1990s through efforts of historian Stephen Ambrose and establishment of National D-Day Museum, later National World War II Museum, in New Orleans. Ambrose, interviewing Eisenhower for biography, learned about Ike's high regard for Higgins and realized that boat builder's story had been unjustly forgotten. He convinced New Orleans civic leaders to establish museum honoring city's wartime contributions, particularly Higgins Industries' production of landing craft. Museum opened June 6, 2000, 56th anniversary of D-Day, featuring extensive exhibits on Higgins, his boats, and their impact on Allied victory. Modern military historians recognize Higgins as pivotal figure whose innovations fundamentally altered amphibious warfare doctrine and strategy. Before Higgins' boats, amphibious assaults required capturing established ports with harbor facilities, strategy that limited options, telegraphed intentions to defenders, and resulted in heavy casualties attacking fortified positions. Higgins's bow ramp design enabled beach landings anywhere coastline was accessible, multiplying possible invasion points, forcing defenders to spread forces thinly across vast coastlines, creating tactical flexibility that made D-Day and Pacific Island campaigns feasible. General Eisenhower's statement that Andrew Higgins is the man who won the war for us wasn't hyperbole. Without Higgins' boats, Allied strategy in both European and Pacific theaters would have been fundamentally different, probably requiring years longer to defeat Axis powers, costing millions of additional casualties, potentially ending in negotiated settlement rather than unconditional surrender. Higgins didn't design weapons that killed enemies. He designed boats that delivered soldiers safely to hostile shores where they could fight effectively. That contribution was as essential to victory as tanks, aircraft, or any weapon system. Adolf Hitler's bitter recognition of Higgins as New Noah, biblical boat builder who'd saved humanity, was inadvertent tribute from enemy who understood that Higgins's landing craft had doomed Nazi Germany's chances of preventing Allied invasion of Europe. If Germany had possessed equivalent amphibious capability, Hitler might have successfully invaded Britain in 1940, ending war before America entered. Instead, lacking effective landing craft, Germany abandoned invasion plans as too risky, strategic mistake that gave Britain breathing space to survive, regroup, and eventually host D-Day invasion launched from British shores. August 28, 1886 to August 1, 1952. 65 years. Born in landlocked Nebraska, built career in Louisiana swamps, created boats that changed modern warfare, employed 25,000 workers during war, produced 23,000 vessels enabling Allied victory, lost fortune in post-war business collapse, died nearly broke and largely forgotten. Then slowly rediscovered as historians recognized that General Eisenhower had been right. Andrew Higgins truly was man who won war through ingenious boat design that Navy experts had declared impossible but which saved tens of thousands of Allied lives by getting soldiers from ship to shore in 10 seconds rather than 3 out of 5 minutes. That's Andrew Jackson Higgins's story. Boat builder, innovator, stubborn entrepreneur who fought Navy bureaucracy, hired women and African Americans decades before civil rights movement, produced revolutionary landing craft that made D-Day possible, and died forgotten before receiving recognition he deserved. His bow ramp seemed obvious once it worked, but obvious innovations are often hardest to achieve because they require questioning assumptions everyone accepts as fact. Navy said front ramp was impossible. Higgins built one in 60 hours and proved them wrong. Sometimes winning war requires stubbornness, practical experience, and willingness to ignore experts who claim impossible.